Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, welcome. Happy Friday. Uh-oh, you muted?
Looks like it. There. Is it now?
Okay. Yeah, good. Welcome. Wake up, buy here, pay here, people. It is, after all, 11 a.m. Eastern, so it's probably time to start collecting some car payment. So it always cracks me up when I hear the intro. Wake up. I'm like, some people are well awake this time of the morning.
Well, you know, but sometimes maybe it's like it's time for another cup of coffee and I'm already feeling tired. We had a busy week this week, y'all. We did a rerun on Wednesday because we had Jim's son in town and had some things that we were doing with him, so we were unable to come live. And as you can probably tell, I'm at my brother's house up in Twin Falls. So
I don't think they recognize the room, but
well, I'm not at home. Yeah. Yeah, not with you. So today, we got any announcements at all? Buyer Pair Forum is coming up.
Yeah, that's November 10th through 12th in New Orleans. Still time to get booked for that. So I would recommend dealers attend that. That's obviously, I think most folks know, it's a roundtable discussions. I'll put the banner up if I can find it quickly, but people will go to the NIADA website and find the dealer forum. There it is.
You found it?
Yep. And so that's where you get registered for that. So there's a chance to do some of what we're doing here, maybe not as specifically there as what we're doing today. I brought together numbers for repo conversation after seeing a pretty active thread on the BHPH Success group, right, in Facebook. And so it just is an example.
It's a recurring theme or a conversation. This last one had a lot of conversation attached to it, though.
Yeah.
But it's people ask questions about all the time.
Yeah. So anyway, before we dive into all that, just other announcements. We've still got group 3, which is our newcomer group. We've got some new folks going to be part of that meeting. We've still got a couple seats in that one. So if you're a dealer with less than 100 accounts and you want to get into a group that has other dealers, so you can compare numbers, and in that group we do a little more coaching. So they're set to meet next week. We've also got a V8 Plus session, for our V8 members. They'll have an event where Brent Carmichael will be joining us on the 31st, the morning of Halloween. We're going to do a session on collector pay plans.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. We can dive into our subject. You got any other announcements?
No.
Okay. All right. So just, this thing about the conversation around repo, I think, so the post, which I didn't pull it together to actually show our viewers, but for those who saw the post, it basically was asking, hey, how many repos do you guys see? And our repos are heavy. And then they asked more specific questions, and the dealer chimed in, and basically, their numbers were about 50% of what they had sold. So in a real simple analogy, if they'd sold 100 cars so far this year, they charged off around 50. And so they were asking, is that normal? And people were, of course, chiming in with all kinds of answers about what's normal or what's typical. And it just so I'm looking at that thinking, well, this is the beauty of, a Facebook group and a chat thread like this when you're amongst dealers and you can speak about these kind of things. I think it's also frustrating for me because it's people don't talk specifically enough, in those threads, and they don't, and there's just so many different ways to look at repo losses, and you can look at loss to liquidation rates and all these different things. And we have several numbers that we watch with our V8 groups and with our dealer clients. I just found that thinking of it as a percentage of sales is interesting if you're thinking about, is my portfolio growing? Obviously, you can begin to examine underwriting and some other things that may be causing, repo losses to look high. But the reason I think it's problematic in terms of looking at repos as a percentage of sales is that, think about a dealer that's got a large portfolio of 1,000 accounts or something. Well, obviously, what they're selling today versus what might be charging off out of a large portfolio the relationship, that ratio is going to vary.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to grow your portfolio, which means growing number of accounts and hopefully growing the resulting cash flow, then you would think about things like net sales is what I call it, where I sold 100, I charged off 30, so I have 70 net sales for that period, right? Not being netted that in many accounts, but that's the idea, is that we have a chance to move our account base forward by that many because we've sold some and charged off some, and that's the net result. So I've got some of those kind of numbers here, as well, and what we'll look at. But I think it's just important to remember there's just so many different ways to look at these numbers. And I just challenge everybody who's weighing in on these conversations to get specific, like share numbers that are as specific as you possibly can, so that dealers have good information. They have, and of course, all the numbers we're going to talk about today are validated numbers, meaning the dealer in a V8 group, the dealer either grants us access to their DMS so we can verify and validate numbers as needed, or they send the source reports that were used to produce the information that's going into their summary report. Okay. That just means all the numbers we're going to talk about today are confirmed. They're legitimate. They're not somebody's ballparking or guessing or, speculating or rounding up or, there's none of that. So I think it's just important to get as specific as we can. And so that's what I've done here today. Any questions before we dive into the actual numbers?
No.
So let me share the screen here that's got a very simple spreadsheet that's pulled together, and I'll just make sure that our listeners who are not seeing the screen, I'm going to kind of share what's on the screen. I basically have a
YouTube, like and subscribe. When we're working off of visuals, that's probably your best place to go to be able to see the actual numbers. We can walk you through them and verbalize them, but I don't know about you, but I'm a visual learner, and I'm not an auditory learner as much as I am a visual learner. So
Yeah, and that's true for me too. I certainly can, lock things in better when I've seen them visually. But to help folks know what they're seeing, these again are from V8 dealer groups members, and I found 16 dealers just in a rush went through, and of the dealers that I could find that had continuous data September, because not all of our members have been in since the beginning in January. But I found 16 who either had been in since January or who had built their data back to January so that we could have some of this kind of information to compare. And of those 16 dealers, I just strung them all out and put a kind of a confidential ID on each one. So, you can see them individually, and you've got 3 different groups.
They're all there. Yeah.
Right. And now what this shows us, and what I chose to track, just again, super simple, was count the number that we've sold, financed January through September, the amount financed or the amount of notes that we've originated, again, January through September. That's what all these numbers are. And then the number of charge-offs, and then the gross amount of those charge-offs. So when we in V8, when we ask for gross charge-off, we're asking for the principal balance on the account at the time that it charged off. So this doesn't have anything to do with repo values. It doesn't matter whether repo was recovered or not, in good condition or not. This is just looking at how much did we charge off? What was the account balance? So, looking at all those numbers, I put totals in there. So those 16 dealers have sold or financed 4,306 is the actual number, 4,306 accounts since January.
Okay. So in the last 9 months.
Yep. And now that averages out to 269 for the year per dealer. And then the total amount financed is just over 61 million for those 16 dealers, which comes out to an average of about 3.8 million per dealer. And then the number charged off, 1,473. And then the gross charge-off principal is just short of 17 million, 16,893. So those numbers are, and again, to look at the numbers compared to what in the way that they were being discussed in that particular thread, this is kind of what they're talking about, is what's typical. Well, this is exact. Like it's not typical or ballpark. It's like exact for this
This
particular
is
group of dealers.
exact averages between
Yeah.
16 dealers, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what that says is the average dealer has financed 269 since the first of the year and has charged off 92.
Mhm.
Their financing, their amount financed again was about 3.8, and they've charged off about just short of 1.1
So,
million.
yeah. So I mean, that's kind of like a typical mid-sized healthy portfolio, right?
Yeah, that's common. I mean, I would say, we have dealers in our groups that are up to 25 million. And then of course
Yeah.
we have dealers that are brand new. I think,
This is around 10 cars a month.
yep, looks like it. Well,
Yeah.
no, it's actually a 269 average. Let's do that divided by 9. So they average 269 for the year. So divided by,
Oh, okay. So then that's about
um,
30 cars a month, just a little
right,
under 30.
right.
Okay.
And so
So
that's kind of what you're looking at. And that's pretty common, right? We got dealers in there that do 80
about 10
cars.
cars a month that are being repoed,
Right.
about
That's right.
average.
Mhm.
Okay. Gotcha. And so these ones that where you've got high low, is that like based on actual numbers, not aggregate?
Correct. So let me first explain these ratios that I have here. So when I did the math on just the number of, if I divide 1,473 charge-offs by 4,306 contracts originated, that came out to 34.2%.
Okay.
34.2%.
The average is 34% repo rate.
Based on numbers, or what
Based on
the finance people would call frequency. Okay, so that's based on numbers, right? And then the severity, which again, you got to be careful, because most people who are talking frequency and severity, they're not really looking at these numbers as a percentage of current sales. You're typically looking at that as a percentage of your portfolio. Okay, so I didn't bring those numbers this morning. I'm just trying to stay in the same kind of track that the conversation over on social media was about. But again, based on accounts, we're at 34.2% for the year. So the dealer asked generally, hey, I'm at roughly 50% charge-offs for the year. Is that high? Well, yes, according to our group average, that's high. Now, according to dollars, charge off in dollars, I'm showing 27.7% in dollars. Again, total accounts charged off in principal versus total originations. That's where I came up with 27.7. And down at the bottom, I kind of left it in to kind of show, if you just did an average of the averages, because I've got each dealer. Here's this last dealer in the group. They were at 30.5 and 18.4. So if you go and do an average across that row, it came out to slightly different, 33.9, 28.0, and not enough but just to help people understand, I'm not doing average of the averages. Those numbers I gave you before were based on the actual totals. And then the high and low, if we look at the number of accounts, number of charge-offs relative to the number of sales, then the highest in the group was 55.7%, and the lowest was 20.3.
Okay.
All right. So it's just looking at kind of give a feel for the range. And then if we look at it on the dollar side, the numbers were similar. The highest in the group was 54.9%, where the low in the group was 13.6.
Was it the same dealer that had the high and the low?
Oh, I didn't check. I don't know. Probably not. So it wouldn't be the same with both, if that's what you're asking. So, it has to be different dealers for the high and low. But bottom line is, it's just picking the dealer with the worst portfolio performance. But again, I think this is a problematic number, because if you've got a large portfolio, it stands to reason that the charge-offs you would be experiencing at any point in time would be higher relative to sales than a dealer who's got a newer, younger portfolio, so to speak.
Well, so if you're looking at just like, are you talking about percentages, or are you talking about just straight numbers?
Well, I guess percentages. I mean, I think it would be the same for both. It's like it just stands to reason that, you're going to have a percentage of your active accounts are going to be charging off at any point in time, right? So as a portfolio grows, if you're consistently selling 30 a month, then you're not going to have that many charge-offs early. But as your portfolio grows to 300, 400, 500 accounts, then it makes sense that you're going to experience more charge-offs at any given time compared to your 30 sales a month. You could have 30 or 40 charge-offs in a month on a 500 account portfolio.
What's the number of accounts that there's a percentage typical that the percentage of an average portfolio, what percentage actually make it to the end of the note?
Oh yeah, I don't have good numbers on. I
Mhm.
remember what Brett Carmichael shared is that their study, when he was with us on the podcast before, he shared that their study said that only about 15% of the
Okay,
consumers, right.
so what that says to me is that because usually it's we say the highest rate of repos happen within the first 12 months.
Mhm.
And so that that to me, if I were a dealer,
Mhm.
not a dealer, that would be where I would be watching my repos more than the entire term of the note,
Mhm.
because it's like, because things happen, and it's not about underwriting, and it's not about those things. Once you kind of get in and it's aged a little while, it's about life events. It's about, something happened bad to the car, whatever. And so if it were me, I'd be looking more at what's happening in my repos in the first 3 months, 6
Right.
months, 9 months to 12 months.
Good.
And that, the considering that it's only 15%, that you're going to have more. But when you're adding those into and you're looking at everything that's happening, because I bet you a lot of those numbers are not from 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, but they're from 18 months, 24 months, all of that.
Could be.
So,
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have mature dealers that are represented in this, these numbers that we're looking at today. So you're absolutely right. And I think, if I'm trying to answer that dealer's question who chimed in and asked the question, hey, are my repos high? I think that's a good point that you make. I think obviously we always recommend a post-mortem analysis is what it's sometimes called. Go in and study the charge-offs that have occurred, what could have been done differently.
yeah.
I always think about our dealer friend Tommy Brandis in Pennsylvania, longtime dealer. He's now celebrated 31 plus years, I think, in business, and he talks about, in a way that I don't hear enough people talk about, this idea that you can structure your deal well, you can underwrite it well to make a decision about the applicant, but if you don't have a good system of collections, if you're not good at the other side of that, then the best underwritten deals in our particular segment are not going to perform very well. So I think we have to look at all those things. I'd certainly go back and look. If I'm doing a postmortem, I would be looking at the deal structure. What did we do wrong in, if anything, in the structure? Did we mess up, put them in too much payment? Did we put them in a problem car? I always say that, if we approve a deal, if we have a problem with a customer or the collateral, we're going to know in the first 3 months, typically. You're
Yeah.
going to know right away.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the first 3 months is where all the troublemakers will come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just kind of slough them off. And it sounds, I mean, I've never been a dealer, but I have listened to a lot of dealers. And so that first 3 months is going to tell you a lot about whether or not you're financing people that are troublemakers, and whether or not you've got underwriting that's starting to filter those out. Because if it were me, that would be the number that I would be most wanting to decrease.
Yeah.
Is that charge off rate in the first 3 months.
Yeah. It's interesting, but it's challenging, because when we talk about a troublemaker, what we're really talking about is a customer who really had ill intention. They really were setting out to take advantage, and they do that, with other people in their life. But
We've all seen them, right?
it's not like you look up their credit report and there's a section called charge-offs and a section called credit inquiries and then a section called, troublemaking. It's not like, in the credit bureau, So obviously underwriting, you want to try to identify some of that. You're always going to have some, but most of our dealers report, consistent with my own experience, that's a single digit number, the people who are actually out to take advantage. So obviously we're always trying to underwrite and avoid doing business with that customer, and that will, that'll naturally resolve itself. But I would say if we underwrite and we go back in and look at our postmortem and we look at our underwriting, did we do anything wrong here with the underwriting? And then you also have to look at the collateral, because again, a lot of these repos and charge-offs are going to be related to mechanical problems. If we don't have, first of all, is there something we missed in the reconditioning? Was the car a problem and we overlooked it? That can be certainly have an impact on these repos and charge-offs. And then the other part of that would be, do we have good solutions for helping the customer if they do run into mechanical problems, which they will, right? These are high used cars. Then do we have solutions for keeping them on the road and avoiding the charge-off? So we have to look at all those elements, right?
And when I think about support, there's as we've talked to different dealers, a reinsurance program is a really great thing to have, whether or not you do self-reinsurance or you have a third party taking care of it, because it's that support thing. And I hear dealers say it's very expensive to get it, but it's also very expensive to not. It's more expensive to not have good support, because what you might put into helping or to fixing a car, that's keeping them in their contract. And so, so reinsurance, yes. It's interesting to me though, to see the range, 20 something percent up to 50 something percent. We don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but, that, 50% is not uncommon.
Right. It's not. And I would say that the thing I look forward to doing, and we can bring this back on a future conversation because it's a separate kind of modeling scenario, but I think you can, in these kind of scenarios, you can run your charge off rates up and just say, okay, if I'm a typical dealer selling, 30 a month, then how high can my charge offs get? So that was kind of the premise of today, is how many is too many? Well, today I just want to talk about how many is too many relative to what is typical.
Yeah.
Right. Like how many would be too much? But in a future conversation, we can analyze, because I've done it in the past, in terms of just showing how high can the repo rate actually get and have us still perform from a cash flow standpoint and a profitability standpoint. Can we, because obviously in our business, those are very different things. Our profit and our cash flow are very different things. And so we can look at both and help dealers make a better judgment. Of course, we want low repo rates. We want the accounts to perform well and make payments and grow our portfolio. That's generally going to be the goal with most dealers we know. And so that's something to think about. But I ran the numbers over here, Michelle, while we were talking. I mean, you talk about repo, you talked about reinsurance and what could it cost you to not have solutions. I just did some quick math on that 27% repo number that we have. If we could cut that to 25% or to 20% rather, that saves us almost $300,000 in charge-offs and profitability in that 9-month period. So, it's like, it's just important to remember that that's something that we don't talk about enough, but it's like the cost. It comes up sometimes when we're talking, people are new, and we just say, look, the mistakes that we can make in this business can be so expensive.
Yeah.
And so we just know that, and this is part of why we like our V8 newcomer group, is get in there, get with a group of other dealers and learn how they're doing it, and learn what we do in our newcomer group is we share all of these numbers from the other groups, not confidentially, right? We don't share the dealers' names, but we share kind of what the other groups are experiencing, and we can look at them on individual groups and individual dealers even. But that's part of what you get a chance to see, is kind of how's it working with others? What's typical, and what could I do to move the needle and improve those numbers, right? That's ultimately what we want to do, is make our business better. So,
Mm-hmm.
people are obviously exchanging ideas over there, but I just think, this kind of stuff is just, it's something I just want us to stay as specific as possible when we talk about numbers of this nature, because people are making business decisions based off this information, right?
That's true.
Yep.
That's very true. And the shameless plug.
Okay.
V8 is a very inexpensive way to be able to have very rich conversations with other dealers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so much you can do on social media.
Sure.
So it's through the end of the year, we aren't changing pricing, but we will be changing pricing at the beginning of the year. And so if it's something that you've been thinking about, please feel free to reach out and have a conversation. Call or text 903-816-0216, and we can get you put in a group. And if you're in a group prior to the 31st, which is next week, you will get access to the conversation with Brent Carmichael about pay plans for collectors, because collections, you mentioned Tommy Brandis, collections is key.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how great your underwriting is. If you don't have a good collections team and process, then it 50% plus is really what's going to happen. So so if that's something you've been on the fence about, please feel free to reach out. Again, 903-816-0216. That's the end of my shameless plug.
Oh, there you go. Okay. We should wrap up there and let folks get to their Friday. I'm going to do the same. I got a long list on Friday. So.
Yeah, I will be at Quinn until end of the weekend, and so I'll see you all. Next one is White Hat Wednesday, next Wednesday. And I don't think we have a topic yet, but we will.
Lots of things to talk about. We haven't decided.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. We appreciate you taking the time, and we will see you on Wednesday. Thanks.